PS2. Okay, the PlayStation 2 was my childhood. I grew up with this console, and to this day, I still think it's one of the best gaming consoles ever made. Not only was it a great gaming console, but it has one of the largest game libraries of all time, with over 4,000 games released to it. And with that massive library of games comes a ton of anime games. Yeah, this console had more anime games than any other. Some were incredible adaptations that captured the anime perfectly and still hold up to this day, while others, they made you wish you had the Men in Black pen.
Thank you, Agent K. Ladies and gentlemen, if you will, look right here.
Here's a quick note though, guys. I'm only looking at PlayStation 2 anime games released here in the USA and in English. Now, if you like this video so much, drop a like down below and that tells me that you want a part 2, where I check out the PlayStation 2 anime games that were released in Japan. And trust me, there's a lot of them. I mean, Japan even got a Berserk game. I mean, come on. I'm also going to be using the traditional tier list, so I'll add them in which column I think they should go in. Again, guys, this is my opinion, so if I didn't like your favorite anime game growing up, I'm sorry. So let's see which games are still worth playing and which games should be forgotten. Okay, with so many anime games to choose from, I'm not even sure where to start. So I'm just going to choose randomly from my list and we'll go from there. And the first game we'll be checking out is One Piece.
Grand Battle!
Hey guys, before we get into the rest of this video, I really appreciate you watching and tuning into my channel. If you're liking this video, drop a like down below. It really helps get my video out there, and subscribe for more content. I have a goal of hitting 50,000 YouTube subscribers by June. I'm not sure if I can do it, but with your help, I can. So if you love anime, manga, retro video games, and anything in between, come join the party. And again, thank you so much. Back to the video. Considering I just started watching One Piece only a couple of months ago, I lack the nostalgia factor here. One Piece Grand Battle was released in 2005, and it's a mix between an arena fighter and a party brawler, where characters from the series duke it out in 3D stages. It's simple overall, sure, but it's not completely mindless. The game has a chibi art style that I would expect from a 3DS game, but I don't really mind it. Each character has their own special attacks, including iconic moves from the series like Luffy's Gundam pistol, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I was put off by a couple of things in this game at the beginning of my playthrough, and I'll get to those in a minute. But after a little while, I realized how easy it is to pick up and play this game. This game actually started to grow on me, and it's actually pretty fun. Alright, let's take a look at the main menu. You've got 5 game modes and 2 little side modes. So you've got Grand Battle, which is basically versus mode. You've got Story mode, which is basically just story versus mode. The mini games are essentially also just versus mode. Grand Tourney is basically just tournament versus mode. And then Training is just versus mode, but by yourself. The other 2 modes are just Treasure, which is where you can view character models and read profiles in very difficult to read font. You can also view little anime clips here that you unlock throughout the game. Finally, the last mode is just a bunch of art pieces that you unlock throughout the story. Okay, so jumping into the story, we'll have you selecting from a variety of different characters. However, you will need to beat the game to unlock the rest of the characters that are shaded out. Don't worry though, you'll unlock those characters very fast because each character's story mode is only like 20 minutes or so. Probably even faster if your game's AI acted anything like mine. Remember how I said there's a couple things I got put off by with this game? If you thought the show's English dub was bad, listen to this.
Hey, you can't just make off with a frying pan like that.
What's the problem? We've got plenty of them, and
why did they make my man Sanji sound like that? There's also other funny little things in this game, like Captain Smoker being called Captain Chaser, and he's missing his classic cigars. Despite the story mode being a short experience, it's actually not all that bad. I was beginning to have a lot of fun playing this game. Every character is unique with special moves and powers. Landing combos was also really addicting because every punch you connected felt like it actually had impact to it. Very satisfying. My favorite character to play was Usopp just because it was hilarious running around and falling over constantly. You can also break a little chest and grab items to get an advantage over your enemy. I gotta say, this game is not all that bad, and I'm sure it was a lot of fun to play back in the day. I'm gonna go ahead and give One Piece Grand Battle a C for being a fun experience that gets pretty repetitive and is kinda short. The game may have 5 game modes, but they're all just essentially different versions of versus mode. Luckily, I think the developers realized that and fixed it in the sequel. So with that being said, let's jump into our next game, One
Piece Grand Adventure.
One Piece Grand Adventure came out in 2006 and is a sequel to Grand Battle. It adds all the things I pretty much said Grand Battle needed to be less boring. By the way, look at this game cover. Why does this go so hard? So right off the bat, this game has an expanded character roster, so you're not just stuck with the same limited lineup. There's also a grand adventure mode where you can sail from island to island, doing missions, recruiting crew members, and upgrading your characters. There's also more maps to fight in, which is a huge plus because variety is always nice. And then the combat, it's pretty much the same. But it's not bad, because if it's not broke, don't fix it. But the most notable feature of this game is the Grand Adventure mode that I just mentioned. This game will have you fighting multiple different enemies on multiple different islands across a pre-time skip One Piece world. Some of these levels are fun, some are frustrating, and some are downright stupid. But even with the occasional annoying mission, I gotta say, this game's pretty good. I found myself having a good time overall. And it doesn't just stop there. Once you finish the Grand Adventure mode, you unlock the regular adventure mode. And this is where you can play as different captains, getting a feel for different characters. So instead of just rolling with Luffy, you can play as characters like Crocodile, Buggy, or even Smoker. My bad. I mean Captain Chaser. This is pretty cool because it adds some much needed replayability. So it's not just a one and done experience, you can go back and play with different characters, try different builds, and do different things. I gotta say, One Piece Grand Adventure is actually a really solid game that can still be enjoyed today. It's got that old school charm, funny censorships, and even funnier voice acting. And then there's enough content to keep you engaged for quite a while. If you're a One Piece fan and like playing the games, I actually recommend you go check this out. I'm gonna put One Piece Grand Adventure at the A tier. It's actually a really good game, and I bet a lot of people loved it back then. All right, moving on. So let's leave the world of One Piece and hang out with a young little robot boy. Hey Evan, can you cut that part out? Just sounds weird.
This is the story of my friend Astro, an incredibly cool robot built by the brilliant scientist Dr. Tenma in the likeness of his son Toby.
Astro Boy, the video game, released on PlayStation 2 in 2004 in Japan, and then the US got it the following year in 2005. I actually remember playing this game when I was a kid when I rented it from a Blockbuster, and I didn't like it. But that was right around the time when I discovered the Battlefront series, so that probably overshadowed it. This game features Astro Boy navigating Metro City, engaging in combat and utilizing his signature abilities like rocket-powered flight and arm cannons. Look, there is something here. You've got fluid combat, a well-realized Metro City, and a solid representation of Astro Boy's iconic powers. However, the gameplay quickly becomes repetitive as and I found myself getting very bored very quickly. Look, with that being said, I wouldn't call this game outright bad. It just doesn't do enough to really stand out. The visuals, while not really groundbreaking for the PlayStation 2, do look pretty good and bring the whole Metro City Astro Boy world to life. The combat, while basic, does have some moments where it does feel very satisfying, especially when you're chaining together Astro Boy's flight, his arm cannons, and the melee attacks. But with a short runtime and minimal replay value, this game just doesn't have much to it. Look, compared to its Game Boy Advance counterpart, Astro Boy and Mega Factor, which is f***ing goated by the way, it's just not very good. That game had a much more engaging structure and better pacing. This game feels more like a side project than some sort of full-fledged effort. So ultimately, Astro Boy on the PS2 is a game that might hold some nostalgic value for fans of the character, but as a standalone action game, it's forgettable. It really lacks the charm and polish to make it a must play. Look, in my opinion, Astro Boy deserves a bit better than this, and considering this is its only PS2 game, that kind of sucks. I'm putting Astro Boy the video game at the D tier. All right, moving on. What is this? Eureka 7 Volume 1, The New Wave. Upon some research, because I've never heard of this anime or game in my life, the game was released in 2006 and serves as a prequel story to the anime series. We play as Sumner Sturgeon, a military cadet who's looking to get lit. Navigating a world where mecha combat and lifting, a form of aerial surfing or hoverboarding, is essential to every operation. The game is actually quite ambitious, attempting to blend various forms of gameplay styles all into one seamless experience. You've got on-foot exploration, mecha battles, and hoverboarding or lifting or whatever they call it. So there's actually quite a bit of gameplay diversity here. Now, the question is it any good? Well, kinda. The mech battles are probably the most satisfying part. They allow for some fast-paced combat and cool action scenes. But one thing that's common through all these game modes is the camera. The camera is awful in this game. I can't stand it. It's never on, it's never looking where you want it to look. So annoying. And the on-foot sections feel sluggish with stiff movement and some boring conversations. The lifting is pretty fun, but sometimes the controls can be so annoying. I don't know if that's the emulator I was using or if that's actually on the PS2, but the controls will cause you to wipe out over and over, and it just got really annoying. Online, I read that the story actually does add some interesting lore to the Eureka 7 universe, giving fans a look at events that take place before the anime series. I've never seen the anime, but I might check it out. Maybe someone in the comments can elaborate more on this game and the lore about it. The cutscenes and character interactions do a decent job of expanding the world, but the problem is that the gameplay rarely matches the energy of the narrative. Or hell, maybe even the PlayStation 2 just didn't have the capabilities to do what the developers wanted this game to do. Either way, I just think it kind of fell flat. If you're a diehard Eureka 7 fan, it might be worth checking out for you, but for everyone else, there's nothing you're gonna get from this game. Okay, so I'm putting Eureka 7 Volume 1 The New Wave at the D tier. I was gonna put it up to the C tier, but to be honest, like I said, if you don't know anything about Eureka 7, this game is gonna do absolutely nothing for you. I mean, it's not really even like too fun to play. All right, what's next? Oh, look at that. They made a sequel. Eureka 7 Volume 2 The New Vision was released literally the same year. When I tell you this game looks and feels identical to the first game, I mean it. I mean, if you booted this game up and didn't tell someone which one they were playing, they probably wouldn't know. The menus are exactly the same, the graphics are exactly the same, and even the gameplay is the same. I didn't notice anything different between these games other than the story and like the missions. I mean, while playing this game, I was legit wondering if they just made some big game and then just chopped it in half and sold it as 2 separate games. In this game, Sumner is a former military pilot turned mercenary who is still trying to get laid, participate in mech battles, and do some good old lifting or hoverboarding or whatever. Just like the last game, the mech battles are probably still the most fun and most satisfying, but the on-foot sections still feel stiff and like a freaking drag. The lifting or hoverboarding sections do see some improvements over the first game, offering a bit more freedom and some, I think, better AI, it kind of seemed like, but overall it still really felt the same. So I'm gonna plop this game right next to the first game at the D tier. Again, if you're a diehard Eureka 7 fan, it might be worth checking out. But for everyone else, it's probably not worth the lift. All right, up next is, the Gundam games. I'm excited to get into these. The Gundam franchise had a huge presence on the PlayStation 2, with multiple games releasing between 2001 and 2006, going from fast-paced arcade battles to story-driven experiences. Instead of ranking each one individually, because, guys, there's a lot of these games and each one probably deserves its own video, I'm gonna go ahead and group them by their different gameplay styles and then rank them from there. By the way, I'm leaving out the strategy Gundam games because there's just too much Gundam here. All right, first up, the Gundam Versus series.
A half-century has passed since Earth began moving its burgeoning population into gigantic orbiting space colonies. It is the year 0079 of the universal century. The cluster of colonies furthest from the Earth, Side 3.
The Gundam Versus series started strong on the PlayStation 2 with Federation vs. Zeon released in 2002. This game brings those fast-paced arcade-style team battles straight from the Japanese arcades to home consoles. This game's all about large-scale battles where you can play as either the Earth Federation or the Zeon. You could pilot a variety of one-year war-era mobile suits in fully 3D arenas. I remember playing this game back in the day and not really understanding it because I was really young, but I also wanted to watch Gundam and I never knew how to find it or what to start watching or anything. I was also like 7 at the time, so give me a break. One of the most unique mechanics in this game is the cost gauge system. So every mobile suit has a value, and when you lose a unit, it drains your team's resources. This makes you actually think before you're deploying a suit into battle, and also just adds so much depth to the gameplay. Do you use a cheap Zaku 2 to conserve resources, or risk a high-cost Gundam for better performance? This system balances out the game, making for each match feel actually strategic rather than just button-mashing brawls. The single-player mode is also fantastic as it follows major battles from Mobile Suit Gundam, letting you experience classic anime moments from both the Federation and Zeon perspectives. Look, the missions aren't the most varied, but the game came out in 2002, so give it a break. While later Gundam Versus games refined the formula, this one laid the groundwork and actually still holds up today. It's honestly still so much fun to play. 3 years later, Bandai came out with Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam.
Get in front of the Archimate. The Rick Diaz team will split and take the flanks.
I understand. Zeta Gundam, Camille, let's do it!
Which is way better than Federation vs. Zeon. It greatly expands the roster and improves the gameplay. This entry introduced suits from both the original show and Zeta Gundam. The biggest upgrade though came in the campaign mode, which featured branching storylines where your actions could determine how the war unfolded. This gave the game more replayability than the previous, making each playthrough feel truly unique. Okay, with all that being said, we're gonna place these 2 games at the A tier. They redefined mech gaming back then and are still honestly worth playing today. Okay, then we have the Gundam story-driven games. Released in late 2003, Mobile Suit Gundam Encounters in Space took a different approach by focusing entirely on high-speed space combat. This game is all about fast aerial dogfights like Top Gun Gundam version. You can boost, dodge, and attack freely in the zero gravity. It feels great to play. The game features a huge single-player campaign covering major battles from the 1 Year War while also including an original storyline starring a custom pilot. I was able to choose my own path and customize my pilot skills and mobile suits. This game mode probably makes this game the most immersive Gundam experience on the PlayStation 2. The combat system is fluid and cinematic and feels straight out of the anime. Another thing is that the cutscenes and voice acting are also really well done.
Federation ship is crewed and operated by civilian youths. Char Aznavour, the Red Comet, tracks the white base as it flees space.
Let's see, shall we? Let's test the reaction time.
Which just adds to the overall experience, making the single player truly amazing. The Gundam versus games were good and all, but this was the Gundam game that you needed to own on the PlayStation 2. That wasn't the only story-driven Gundam game to be released on the PlayStation 2 though. Back in the early 2000s, the Gundam series that was exploding at the time was Gundam Seed. And to capitalize on this popularity, Bandai came out with Gundam Seed Never Ending Tomorrow.
Come on and shoot me, just like you said you would! Run! Kira! Run!
This is a fast-paced action game kind of like the last one based on the later half of the Gundam Seed anime. You play as Kira Yamato and Athrum Zala, piloting mobile suits like the Strike Freedom and Aegis Gundam, while fighting through key moments from the anime and the game's story mode. There's a lot of repeating missions and the controls somehow feel worse than the last game. It lacks all the finer details of encounters in space. Look, I'm sure it's still a fun game for Gundam Seed fans, but for general players who just want a good Gundam experience on the PlayStation 2, I would go back to Encounters in Space. So I'm putting Encounters in Space at the S tier, and then Never Ending Tomorrow will go in the B tier. Wow, our first S tier game. Do you guys agree with that? Okay, so let's talk about one of my favorite PlayStation 2 franchises growing up, the Naruto Ultimate Ninja series. Hell yeah. So just like the Gundam games, there's a lot of these. They somehow popped out a Naruto game every single year during the PlayStation 2's era. I might go a little quicker on these because they're all fighting games and they're all kind of similar to the last one, just adding new improvements, new gameplay, new characters, and maybe like a new game mode. Okay, up first is, can you guess it? Yeah, it's
Naruto Ultimate Ninja!
The first Ultimate Ninja game was released in 2003 and is pretty bare bones when you look at it today. But you gotta understand, this game introduced the whole flashy 2D anime fighting game style. It was unlike any other fighting game at the time, like truly. I just love the over-the-top cinematic cut-ins that made every big jutsu feel like it came straight out of the anime. The game features a simple mission-based story mode that loosely followed early arcs in the anime, though it doesn't really dive too deep into the plot at all. It kind of reminds me of One Piece Grand Battle, where you just had very basic missions. However, like I said, as in the first game of the series, it was pretty limited in scope. The character roster is small with only 12 playable fighters, and while the special moves were fun to watch, the actual combat felt a little shallow. Still, I remember playing this growing up and I had an absolute blast. Despite its shortcomings though, Ultimate Ninja laid the groundwork for what would become one of the most successful anime fighting game franchises ever. Look, it may not hold up today because all the other iterations made it better and improved on it, but back in 2003, this was a shit. So I'm putting Naruto Ultimate Ninja at the B tier. Look guys, if I let the nostalgic side of me take over, I'll be giving every single game in this list an S tier. Okay, I need to leave some room for improvement. 1 year later, Ultimate Ninja 2 came out and expanded on the whole foundation of the first. We've got more characters, deeper game mechanics, and an actual story mode. The roster is nearly doubled here, introducing fan favorite characters like the Sound 4, Itachi, and Jiraiya. The combat also feels way smoother with better hit detection and more polished animations. However, the biggest improvement is the Ultimate Road mode. This game mode replaced the simple arcade story from the first game with a full RPG-like experience. I could run around the whole Hidden Leaf Village, interact with characters, and complete side missions. I was blown away by this when I was a little kid. And it's amazing how this same formula still kind of carries on in games to this day. The story in Hidden Road follows the anime's Chunin exams all the way up to the Sasuke retrieval arc, making it feel like a proper story mode rather than just an arcade fighting game. I was also able to upgrade my characters and add new skills to them. It adds some much needed variety to the game and feels more immersive. God, I used to love running around the Hidden Leaf Village and just pretending I was in the Naruto universe. Overall, Ultimate Ninja 2 feels like a natural progression of the Ultimate Ninja series. Much like One Piece Grand Adventure, it's not a major overhaul, but it is a a solid refinement, and is 100% still enjoyable today. I'm placing Ultimate Ninja 2 in the A tier. Now on to the best of the Ultimate Ninja franchise, Naruto Ultimate Ninja 3. This was often considered the best of the PlayStation 2 era of Naruto games because it took everything from the last ones and added more. Even more depth in the fighting, more variety in the skills, and more content to play with. This game expands the roster again, featuring nearly 40 playable characters, including the Sannin, the Sound 4, and even classic filler characters like Anbu Kakashi. The story mode is also a huge step up. Combat also sees a lot of improvements. Everything feels much more fluid and smooth, and you have new awakening transformations. This let me power up mid-fight and turn the tide on my enemy. Ultimate Ninja 3 feels like the most refined Naruto game on the PlayStation 2. It has the best roster, most refined mechanics, and a fun single-player mode that will keep you engaged for hours. Naruto Ultimate Ninja 3 is an S-tier game for the PlayStation 2. I'm pretty sure most people had this in their PlayStation 2 collection to satisfy their Naruto itch, especially after the US got the tuning exams. Yeah. And then you got Ultimate Ninja 4. This game made the jump into the Shippuden era. Of course, that introduces the older versions of the characters, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. I personally missed this game because this came out right around the time the Xbox 360 did, so I was busy playing on that. The combat remains largely the same, but the biggest addition is this Master Mode. The Master Mode is pretty cool though. It features an original story set right before Naruto returns to the village after training with Jiraiya. Beyond that though, it's very similar to Ultimate Ninja 3's RPG story mode and doesn't really add much to make it better. And that's why I'm gonna put Ultimate Ninja 4 at the A tier. It's not bad, it's just not quite as good as Ultimate Ninja 3, but it still obviously improves on 1 and 2. Okay, so let's touch base on where we are. Here's the list. Yeah. Okay, so before Sword Art Online came around and made that whole trapped in a video game thing mainstream, there was the Dot Hack series. This was one of the most unique anime RPG franchises on the PS2. Developed by CyberConnect 2, the series stood out for its deep world building, immersive mechanics, and simulated MMORPG experience. This anime series is only 1 season and spawned 7 games. So yeah, there's a lot of these games. Considering there's so many games, just like the Gundam ones, I'm gonna downsize it just a little bit. We're only gonna look at the main 4 games in this franchise. And the crazy thing about these 4 games is they all came out in like the span of a year. They were pumping out games like crazy during the PS2 days. The first entry in the Dot Hack series, Infection, introduced players to The World, a simulated MMORPG complete with in-game emails, message boards, and dungeon crawling. Instead of being a straightforward turn-based action RPG, it blended real-time combat with MMO-inspired mechanics. However, this is the first part of a 4-game saga, so it felt more like an introduction than a full game. Kind of like the first Naruto Ultimate Ninja. The mechanics were fresh, the combat is pretty basic, and the progression is very slow. I'm gonna place the first Dot Hack in the C tier. It's not a bad game, but it definitely improved. The second installment, Mutation, expanded on everything from Infection, improving combat variety, enemy AI, and dungeon design while adding new mechanics. It made quality of life improvements and continued to develop the world, making it a strong follow-up. The second Dot Hack will go in the C tier. It's an improvement, just not by much. By the third entry though, Outbreak, the series hit its stride. The gameplay saw more refinements with improved party AI, faster combat, and new abilities that made the battles feel more engaging. One of the standout elements is how dynamic the world gets. NPCs respond to events, in-game news reflect changes, and the story felt more urgent. The progression system is also way better in this game, making leveling and combat feel less of a grind than the earlier games. The third game got much better overall, so I'm going to place it in the B tier. The final entry in the original saga, Quarantine, delivered the most refined gameplay in the largest world in the series up to that point. In this game, you have access to the full roster, expanded equipment choices, and more engaging combat scenarios. The AI is also even better in this game, thank God, making party management much smoother. So for those of you who want to go back and play the Dot Hack series, I think the 4th one is the best one. It's the most refined, best gameplay, best AI, and the most things to do in it. It's definitely the best representation of the Dot Hack series on the PlayStation 2. So the 4th Dot Hack game will go in the A tier. Next up is also one of my favorite gaming franchises ever that I grew up on, the Dragon Ball Z Budokai series. The Dragon Ball Z Budokai series was one of the first major fighting game franchises to bring the Dragon Ball Z combat to life on the PlayStation 2. Budokai was the first to truly capture the look and feel of the anime, with cinematic special attacks, a full story mode, and a roster of iconic characters. Between 2002 and 2004, Bandai released 3 Budokai games. The first one is, you guessed it, Budokai 1. The first entry in the Budokai series was a game changer for Dragon Ball Z fans at the time. I know it was for me. It was one of the first truly cinematic Dragon Ball Z games featuring 3D character models, cutscenes recreating iconic anime moments, and a full story mode covering the Saiyan, Frieza, and Cell sagas. The combat system was simple and effective, using a 2D fighting system with 3D character models. However, despite being groundbreaking at the time, Budokai 1 definitely was limited. The combo system was pretty basic and the combat overall felt very stiff. Plus, the lack of beam struggles and flight mechanics meant it didn't quite capture the full DBZ experience. But at the time though, it was a huge step up for Dragon Ball Z fans. I'm placing Budokai 1 at the B tier. Just 1 year later, Budokai 2 refined almost everything from the first game, making it bigger, flashier, and more polished. One of the most controversial changes in this game was the removal of the traditional story mode. This game's story mode features a board game where you move the pieces around, and I remember hating this when I was younger when I first saw it, but I grew to love this so much. I don't know why, but even now it's still so much fun to play. This is such a creative mode, rather than just telling the DBZ story the classic way over and over and over again. One of the biggest upgrades too was the graphics. This game still looks great. Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 will get an A for me. I love this game. All right, now for my favorite one, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3. Released in 2004, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 is the Dragon Ball Budokai game to play if you're gonna go back and play one of them. This is where everything clicked for the franchise, delivering the most refined combat system, best roster, and most immersive Dragon Ball Z experience of the trilogy. The biggest improvement was the combat speed and fluidity. Everything was much smoother in this game, the hit detection was better, and the AI is better, everything is just better. You had faster combos, better cancel mechanics, and smoother movement that made the battles feel more dynamic. The Dragon Universe mode was also another massive highlight. So despite me thinking Budokai 2's board game was good, they got rid of it. But I'm not mad. This mode is honestly better. Here you can fly around in open world RPG style story mode. You could fly to different locations, unlock secret battles, and level up characters with custom stat boosts. This mode alone added so much replayability. I played this so many times as a kid. To this day, this is one of the best Dragon Ball Z experiences that you can enjoy today. Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 is gonna get an S tier for me. The best of the Dragon Ball Z Budokai games, and it's still one of the best Dragon Ball Z games to this day. While the Budokai series brought the whole 2D fighting style to life for Dragon Ball fans, it was the Budokai Tenkaichi series that brought the anime into the 3D landscape. Again, this completely changed everything. Now the fights felt even more like Dragon Ball. And the most recent Dragon Ball game, Sparking Zero, is based off this series. It's technically the Budokai Tenkaichi 4. Between 2005 and 2007, Bandai released 3 Budokai Tenkaichi games, each improving on the combat, rosters, and overall depth. The first game in the Budokai Tenkaichi series introduced a brand new combat system, taking DBZ fights from 2D battlefields into 3D open arenas. For the first time, you can freely fly, attack, and dodge in these massive maps. The game features a behind-the-back camera angle, making you feel like you're actually in the fight rather than just watching from the side like you're Krillin. There is even destructible environments, so you can level cities, mountains, and islands just like the anime. Just like Budokai and Ultimate Ninja, this game set the foundation for everything to come. So looking back on it today, it looks a little bland, but back then it was insane. So I'm gonna put Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi at the B tier. 1 year later, Budokai Tenkaichi massively expanded on the first game, making improvements in nearly every area. The biggest upgrades are the character roster, the better combat, and new ultimate attacks. The story mode is also a huge improvement. The only flaw with this game is that the combat just feels a little clunky at times. Oh, and the transformations were unbalanced. But compared to the first game, Budokai Tenkaichi 2 was a massive step up, and it's still regarded as one of the best Dragon Ball Z games to this day. People also love the cover. Now, if there's one Dragon Ball Z game out there that stands above the rest and that everyone even still wants to this day, physically, they want the physical version of it because it costs like $300 now, is Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. For the longest time, this was probably one of the best Dragon Ball Z games to date. What made Budokai Tenkaichi 3 so great? It has the biggest roster in DBZ game history. I'm talking over 160 characters, the fastest and most fluid combat in the series, better beam struggles, day and night battles, and an improved counter system. The story mode is also the most complete story mode that we've gotten up to that point. It features every major saga from Dragon Ball Z, GT, and even the movies. If you want the ultimate Dragon Ball Z experience on the PlayStation 2, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 was it. I'm placing Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 at the S tier. This is one of the best anime games on the PlayStation 2. Unlike anime like Dragon Ball Z and Naruto, which got dozens of games on the PlayStation 2, Fullmetal Alchemist only got 2 English release games. Fullmetal Alchemist and the Broken Angel was released in 2005 and is an original story set in the Fullmetal Alchemist universe. Gameplay-wise, Broken Angel is a bit of an action RPG and a hack-and-slash game. You attack enemies in real time with your auto mail and alchemy abilities. You mix up your light and heavy attacks with special alchemy-based transformations. You can also interact with the environment and transmute objects into like cannons, weapons, or whatever. For Fullmetal Alchemist fans, the original storyline, familiar characters, and anime-style cutscenes kind of make it worth playing. I'm putting Fullmetal Alchemist and the Broken Angel on the C tier. Only 1 year later, and damn, they'd be pumping these games out quick. 1 year later, we got the follow-up to this game. Fullmetal Alchemist Curse of the Crimson Elixir was released in 2006. This game delivers a smoother, faster paced, and more polished experience. To be honest, this game is just a continuation and a more refined version of the first one, so I'm just gonna place this one at the B tier. It's a little bit better, but you know, I don't know if it's quite A tier level. Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles is a one Naruto game not a part of the Ultimate Ninja series. In my opinion, this game is alright at best. I appreciate them trying something different and unique, but to be honest with you, it just kind of fell flat and really doesn't hold up today. I'm placing Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles at the D tier. There are actually 2 other Dragon Ball games that came out for the PlayStation 2 that are not a part of the Budokai or the Budokai Tenkaichi series. Dragon Ball Z Sagas has got to be one of the most miserable Dragon Ball Z experiences I've ever had in a video game. This game is straight dog shit and no one should play it. F tier. Dragon Ball Z Infinite World is often considered the spiritual successor to the Budokai series, especially Budokai 3. Essentially, Infinite World takes a lot of the mechanics from the Budokai trilogy, but refines them and streamlines them in certain ways. Infinite World is a solid game, but it's definitely not as good as Budokai 3, which is strange because it came out like 3 or 4 years after. It has a lot of stripped down features from the Budokai series, and it doesn't even feature that open world story mode that Budokai 3 does. So there's not as much replay value there. Still, it's a pretty decent game. I'm gonna place it at the B tier. Okay, so while Pokemon was out there dominating the Pocket Monster scene, there's another franchise called Digimon.
Digimon Rumble Arena 2.
There were only 2 Digimon games released in the US. The first one I'm going to look at is Digimon Rumble Arena 2. This game is actually not bad at all. It plays very similar to Super Smash Bros. And features a lot of Digimon characters to play as and a bunch of different arenas to fight in. The campaign is pretty extensive too, featuring multiple different endings. I think the biggest issue with this game is that it can get pretty boring since all you do is fight in the arena over and over again. But if you want a Digimon experience on the PlayStation 2, this one's it. I'm placing Digimon Rumble Arena 2 at the B tier. Oh, now we're on Digimon World 4. I don't like this game. This game is basically a worse version of Diablo, but featuring Digimon characters. It's hot garbage. F tier. Inuyasha Feudal Combat is the only Inuyasha game to be released on the PlayStation 2, but it's actually pretty solid. It's a 2v2 3D fighter. The combat is simple and effective. You've got light and heavy attacks, blocks, and special moves tied to each character. The 2v2 battle system is also very unique. You can switch between your 2 characters and even perform joint attacks with them both. There's even a relationship meter, which is pretty cool because it shows you how well the characters work with each other. While not as deep as Dragon Ball Z Budokai or Naruto Ultimate Ninja, Feudal Combat is a solid anime brawler that captures the Inuyasha world well. I'm going to place it at the B tier. Samurai Champloo Sidetracked is the only Samurai Champloo game to be released on the PlayStation 2 as well. Let me tell you something though, this game is kind of a hidden gem. The story mode tells an original story set before the anime's events. I love when anime games do this because I'm tired of playing through the same story over and over again. I'm looking at you, Dragon Ball Z games. It plays like a stylized beat-em-up hack and slash, where you slice through waves of enemies in linear levels, but the style, music, and silhouette cut-ins when you slash an enemy make it so satisfying. Speaking of the music, the combat is music-based. So if you equip different combat records, it alters your attack style and combos. This is so fresh and unique for an otherwise standard hack and slash fighting game. If you're a fan of Samurai Champloo like I am, I would highly recommend you go check this game out. You'll definitely enjoy it. If this game had a bit more depth by adding a longer story mode, more characters, and a bit better level design, I would have placed it higher. I'm going to place Samurai Champloo Sidetracked at the B tier. Time for some Bakugan. Bakugan Battle Brawlers is a game that tried to capture the excitement of the Bakugan toy battling phenomenon, but it has some mixed results. Unlike traditional fighting games or RPGs, this game focuses on the Bakugan placement, power-ups, and quick-time mini-games rather than just direct combat. Unfortunately, my emulator wasn't working well with this game, so I couldn't really get a good feel for it. But through my research, compared to other anime games, this one doesn't seem to hold up quite well. But it does seem like Bakugan fans really did enjoy this. Great for fans, but kind of boring for general players. I'm gonna place Bakugan Battle Brawlers at the C tier. And here's the final game that I'm gonna rank.
Shaman King, Power of Spirit.
Shaman King Power of Spirit is a strategy action hybrid developed by the same studio behind Dragon Ball Z, Budokai, and other anime games. Released in 2004, it was based on the Shaman King anime and manga, but features an original story that diverges from the series. Instead of being a traditional fighting game or turn-based RPG, it attempts to combine them both. Look, I respect the effort. So it combines turn-based tactical battles with real-time 3D combat. You move your characters around like in a tactical RPG similar to Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics. When two units engage, the game shifts to a one-on-one arena-style battle similar to Budokai, but more limited. I don't know, it's a little slow and doesn't quite hold up today. I think the issue with this game is that they combined two completely different gameplay elements and didn't quite make either one of them very good. I'm placing this game at the C tier. It's not a bad game and it definitely tried to innovate, but I don't know, it's alright at best. Alright guys, that's the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Drop a like and subscribe down below. I'm gonna make a part 2 where I check out the Japanese only games, but also the games I missed in this particular ranking video. I think there's a couple of them. I may take them all and put them into another video, like a part 3 or something. Let me know. Either way, I hope this was a blast from the past and it took you down a nostalgic trip. And yeah, I'll see you guys later.